Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is one about extreme cruelty and an absolute lack of humanity. And not only by the individuals who committed these crimes against an 8-year-old little girl, but also in the aftermath of her death by many members of the public. This is the story of Asifa Bano. Asifa Bano was an 8-year-old girl who lived in Kathu, India. She had been raised by her aunt Nasima Bibi and her uncle Muhammad Yusuf Pujwala. They had adopted her when she was just a toddler, so she knew them as mom and dad. Asifa also had 2 older sisters. The family belonged to a community of Muslim nomadic shepherds called Gujars, who crisscrossed the Himalayas with their goats, buffaloes, and horses. Then, on the afternoon of January 12, 2018, Asifa's father, Muhammad, went down to the Harananjar police station to report that his daughter was missing. He said that 2 days earlier, around 12:30 in the afternoon, Asifa had left the house to go watch over some grazing horses. She was last seen at 2 p.m., walking off into the forest with them. But when the horses returned at 4 p.m., she was nowhere to be seen. When the girl's parents realized that she was missing, they, along with some neighbors, took their lanterns, flashlights, and axes into the woods and began to look for her. But they'd been unsuccessful. So the family then went to the police station to report her as missing. Authorities, however, were not at all helpful to the family. One officer actually told Muhammad that maybe his 8-year-old daughter had run off with a boy and gotten eloped. Even though the police were refusing to help Asifa's family find her, as news of her disappearance spread, people staged a protest and even blocked off a highway. This forced authorities to assign 2 officers to the search. Then 5 days later, on January 17th, as Muhammad was sitting outside, one of his neighbors ran up to him and informed him that they had found the dead body of his 8-year-old daughter. She was lying in a ditch a few hundred meters away from the home. Asifa was bruised all over. She had broken bones and was covered in blood. Her mother, Nasima, rushed to the area where her daughter had been found, and she would say about her: she had been tortured, her legs were broken, her nails turned black, and there were blue and red marks on her arms and fingers. There were scars on her cheeks. Her lips had turned black, and her eyes had bulged out. It was not only extremely scary, but also heartbreaking for me to see my daughter's bruised and battered body. She was my youngest child. It was horrific. She was subjected to a lot of cruelty and barbarism by the perpetrators. An autopsy of Asifa's body was performed the very same day, and it revealed the presence of clonazepam in her system, which is a generic version of Klonopin, a drug used to treat anxiety disorders, and also has a sedative effect. It was additionally found that Asifa had been brutally RAPED'd by multiple men. Then she'd been strangled and hit in the head with a heavy rock. Authorities believed that the little girl had been confined inside a local Hindu temple for several days and given sedatives that kept her unconscious. She was then repeatedly assaulted, tortured, and finally murdered. Less than a week later, on January 22nd, police released a statement in which they listed 8 individuals who had been arrested and charged with the crime. Shockingly, this included 4 police officers, 2 of whom were charged on suspicion of attempting to destroy evidence and of accepting money to cover up the incident. A 60-year-old man who was also a retired government officer named Sanjay Ram had planned the crime with the help of police officers Surinder Verma, Anand Dutta, Tilak Raj, and Deepak Kajuria. Sanjay's son, Vijal, his nephew, who originally claimed to be only 15 at the time but was really 19, and his friend Parvesh Kumar had also joined in. Some of these police officers who had been arrested were the ones who had originally lodged the complaint that Asifa was missing, and they had even accompanied her family in looking for her at one point. One officer, Anand Dutta, who was originally in charge of the investigation, took more than $6,000 in a bribe to help put a lid on the crime. He'd also washed the clothes that Asifa had been wearing at the time of the incident, before sending them to a crime lab to erase any traces of blood or semen. Now, the ringleader of this despicable crime, Sanjay Ram, was not only a retired government official, but also the priest in charge of a nearby Hindu temple. The same temple where the girl had been held captive for days. Back on January 10th, when 8-year-old Asifa had been walking alongside her horses, Sanjay's nephew had approached her, grabbed her by the neck, and forced her to take some sedative medication. Then, with the help of his friend Parvesh, the teen dragged Asifa's body to his uncle's nearby temple and locked her inside. The little girl's parents had even walked by this temple several times while they had been looking for her, but had no idea of the horror that had occurred inside. Over the next 3 days, Asifa had been repeatedly violated by at least 4 of the men who were involved. On the 4th day, they decided it was finally time to kill the little girl by strangling her with her own clothing. But before they followed through with ending her life, one of the police officers who was involved with this depravity, Deepak, decided that he wanted to have his way with her one last time. Afterwards, in order to make sure that Asifa was dead, they smashed her head with a large rock twice. It was believed that the reason for these brutal acts against an innocent child was because the men had wanted the Gujar community, which Asifa and her family were part of, to leave the area. The Gujar people were nomadic shepherds who were also a Muslim minority. And where Asifa's family lived, it was a Hindu-dominated area. So due to their difference in religious beliefs, many locals did not like their presence. And over the last several years, it had sparked some serious tension. Come to find out, Sanjay Ram had been planning this attack on little Asifa for over a month. He and his partners in crime wanted to inflict as much collective humiliation and pain upon the entire community, forcing them to leave. And for this, they made 8-year-old Asifa their target. Apparently, Sanjay's nephew, the one who had previously claimed to be a minor but wasn't, had been beaten up by a member of the Gujar community in the past too, which was also part of the reason why they decided to target Asifa. Now, the arrests of these vile men did not bring peace to the community as one would expect. Instead, it began to spark protests, and lawyers even tried to stop police from entering the courthouse to file charges. While many people were shocked and angered by what had happened to little Asifa and called out for justice, there were also many who began rushing to the defense of the accused men, including a Hindu extremist group called the Hindu Ekta Manch, or the Hindu Unity Movement. They protested through the streets of Kashmir, displaying a massive Indian flag and chanting, "Long live India," along with demanding that police release the men.
Her alleged assailants are Hindu. That's a circumstance that's ripe for conflict in a Hindu-dominated area in one of the most polarized states in India, which is seeing a rise in religious tension under the conservative government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Reverberations from the arrest were immediate. On one side, lawyers from the local bar association tried to block police from filing arrest papers in courts. They said the Hindu men had been framed. Then, 2 state ministers of India's governing party were accused of attending a rally in support of the alleged assailants. They were later forced to step down, and Modi vowed that the culprits would not escape. Still, many protesters believe that the government has not done enough to protect the safety of women.
But what happened after Asifa's murder somehow gets even worse. Shortly after the little girl was killed, many individuals began spreading thousands of memes online, mocking what had happened to her. Horrifyingly, Asifa's name also climbed to the top of Pornhub's search rankings in India. One of the most disgusting things I've ever heard in my life. Then, when her family tried to bury her in a graveyard where they had previously purchased land and already buried 5 other individuals, they were met by Hindu right-wing activists who threatened violence on them. So they ended up having to walk an additional 7 miles and bury Asifa in another village. As if the little girl's family wasn't suffering enough for what they had gone through, the little girl's father said that Hindu nationalists had threatened him and his family several times since the incident. They said, if our men are given the death sentence, we will kill you one by one. Asifa's mother said that she now fears for her 2 remaining daughters, one of which is 13 years old. She said, they did this with an 8-year-old girl. Imagine what they could do with a 13-year-old. She also described her daughter, Asifa, as a chirping bird who ran like a deer. When they traveled, she looked after the herd. The mother said, that made her the darling of the community. She was the center of our universe.
एक माँ की सदा सुन न पाए तो लगता है गूंगी है बहरी है दिल्ली वो आँखों में अश्कों का दरिया समेटे वो उम्मीद का एक नजरिया समेटे.
On June 10th, 2019, 6 of the men accused were convicted, and 1 was acquitted of his crimes. 3 of those convicted were sentenced to life imprisonment, or 25 years, so I'm not sure why it's called life. 3 of the police officers involved were also found guilty of destroying evidence, and they were sentenced to 5 years in prison. The supposed juvenile was tried separately, and I wasn't able to find any information about what his punishment was. Unfortunately, in the end, the perpetrators succeeded in their goal of driving the nomadic Muslim people out of the area. Many of them left after Asifa's death, fearing for the safety of their own daughters. That included Asifa's mother and father, who had to leave the village due to relentless threats and intimidation at the hands of Hindu extremists. Well, thank you for listening to Asifa's story today. This case has me more disappointed in people than I ever have been. Just because this innocent 8-year-old little girl and her family believed in a different God than the men who were accused of brutalizing her, that somehow made their crimes okay in the eyes of many people. Disgusting. So disgusting, I don't even have words for it. What do you think about this case? So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least 3 times every single week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.